Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Today is Wednesday, May 8th, 2024. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Georgia's new voting laws are being likened to Jim Crow laws, with civil rights groups saying it is a clear case of voter suppression. Melanie Campbell, President and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, will join us to talk about its impact. In Pennsylvania, the GOP representative, Scott Perry, heard on a leaked audio recording claims the KKK is the military wing of the Democratic Party. He also talked about white replacement theory and how it's real. In Louisiana, Republican Governor Jeff Landry is one step closer to rewriting the state constitution. We'll talk to a Dillard University professor about the dangers of Republicans moving full steam ahead trying to completely rewrite the Constitution. A Texas DA defends its decision to continue terrorizing Crystal Mason after an appeals court acquitted her in the voting case. We're going to play for you what he had to say, and he had lots of detractors at the Tarrant County Commissioner's Court. Plus, a federal court issued a ruling on the controversial classroom censorship provision of the Arkansas's Learn Act. We'll talk with the director of the Educational Opportunities Project from the Lawyers Committee about that. Also, Monday, when Vice President Kamala Harris, when she spoke in Detroit, she talked about forgiving medical debt and student loan debt. It's amazing how many people continue to say that, oh, they're not doing anything for black people. We're talking billions of dollars. I'm going to unpack that further as well. It's time to bring the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go. I need somebody to come in here. I need this.
Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time. And it's rolling.
CNN obtained an audio recording of Pennsylvania Congressman Scott Perry, Republican, making disparaging comments about migrants and claiming the KKK is the military wing of the Democratic Party. Perry made the remarks in a closed-door meeting with other lawmakers Tuesday during a House Oversight Committee member briefing. It was on the origins and implications of rising anti-Semitism in higher education. He also touted how replacement theory is real. Listen.
But here's where I have a problem. This refundable tax credit. See, my folks get up every day. They get up early. It's usually dark. They put their kids on the school bus and they go to work to afford their bills. By the way, which they can barely afford right now. They can't afford their groceries.
All right, y'all, so that's Scott Perry right there. That's him on the floor, running his mouth as usual on the floor, talking about, now mind you, this is one of the same people who was very much involved in trying to overturn the election. Now, he's real good with conspiracy theories and all of this sort of stuff. We're going to play the audio for you in a second, but this goes to show you what you're dealing with. Like, he's one of the top Republicans that Donald Trump looks to and MAGA Republicans look to, and this is what they are all about. Let's talk about this with my Wednesday panel. I'm glad to have everybody here. Joining me is Scott Bolden, attorney here in D.C., former head of the Political Action Committee for the National Bar Association. Also, Robert Patillo, host People, Passion, and Politics, News and Talk 1380 WAOK, who's also running for judge there in Atlanta. Rebecca Carruthers, Vice President, Fair Election Center out of D.C. Glad to have all three of you here. So here's what you're dealing with here, Scott. You're dealing with Republicans. This is what's hilarious. So he calls the KKK the military wing of the Democratic Party. But if I'm correct, the KKK endorsed Donald Trump, and they stand with Republicans. Which party actually defends Confederate monuments? Which party actually supports Confederate history days? Republicans. And they also are, again, Democrats are trying to bring in these migrants, these illegal immigrants, to replace us. Well, Scott, white people stop having kids. The white fertility rate, no, but it's just true. The white fertility rate is extremely low. That's just a fact. And so this literally, all you're hearing from him, that's this. It's white fear. How the browning of America is making white folks lose their minds. That's all this dude is about. And what he's articulating is exactly what Tucker Carlson did on Fox News, other people on Fox News. This literally is the worldview of Fox News conservatives and white Republicans because they are scared to death of the browning of America.
Yeah, and they're the same party that's against DEI, the same party that has this creation in their own mind that somehow critical race theory is taught at the grade school level or high school level or even the college level. But Roland, let me tell you what's even more dangerous about Scott Perry's rhetoric, right? What's more dangerous about Scott Perry's rhetoric is, what you're not reporting on, is the people he were talking to, other lawmakers, right? That they listened to it and did not interrupt him, correct him, or denounce him in that meeting. You want to stop racism in this country and race discrimination. White Americans who are silent in the face of this racial oppression and this racial rhetoric and BS, right? They need to stand up and not just be anti-racist and say, oh, no, I'm not a racist. They need to be anti-racism. So when their colleagues speak like this, that they correct them, they denounce them, and they find it unacceptable. Because until white America stands up and does that, then this poison running through 30-40% or more of the Republican Party, of MAGA, and those who certainly don't want to see 2043 or see something wrong in our democracy, when and if we become a country of color, we will never stop this generational racism. And so I'm not just critical of Scott Perry, I'm critical of those who listened, received that information, but didn't denounce him or correct him in that meeting or outside that meeting.
Rebecca, this is the quote here. The KKK in modern times, a lot of young people think somehow it's a right-wing organization when it's the military wing of the Democratic Party. Decidedly, unabashedly racist and anti-Semitic. Then he said replacement theory is real. They added white to it to stop everybody from talking about it. And then he says that he's happy that people are here that are here legally, but he also talked about, these folks who are migrating here who are un-American. Quote, what is happening now is we're importing people into the country that want to be in America but have no interest in being Americans, and that's very different. And to disparage the comments is to chill the conversation so that we can continue to bring in more people that we never met that are un-American. Now, of course, he goes, oh, my remarks were twisted. Quote, once again, the radical left twists facts in order to silence conversation about its own crimes and Biden's intentional failures to enforce laws and close or regulate our borders. My point is proven yet again. When the left loses an argument, it debases and smears instead of engaging in debate on merits. First of all, there are no merits to the conversation. There is no debate. This, though, Rebecca, this is the Republican Party. This is what they're running on. This is what they believe. When they say it, believe them, because this is what they are putting in place in terms of policy. When you got Republicans in Texas and Florida who literally are passing laws saying cities cannot order water breaks from people who work outdoors, they don't mind migrants falling dead in the fields or outside working, because they're like, we're gonna outlaw water breaks and heat and heat breaks. These people, they have no decency. And so what you're seeing is a Republican Party today appeals to white racists. They do. It's just a reality.
Roland, so he's right if he was talking about historically, KKK has been tied to the Democratic Party. But for him to say the modern Democratic Party and talking about the KKK now, we know KKK members not only vote Republican, but they endorse Republicans. If he actually was taught critical race theory, he would understand these things. If he was actually taught real history, including the history that him and his ilk are trying to ban, he would understand the difference. Now, is he right that we should do something in immigration? Absolutely. But where he starts to veer off again is saying that the people who are coming into this country, they want to live in America, but they are un-American or they don't want to be American. And much like Kendrick Lamar over the last week got us into a debate of what it means to be a Black American as an ethnic group, I think we should have a conversation around this. What does it mean to be an American in America? Because there is a wide variety of what it means to be American, but maybe it's time for us to distill it and to actually contemplate and to talk about it. I think his colleagues should have pushed back and asked him, so what does it mean to be American? How are these people un-American? After all, aren't they coming to this country to live out the immigrant story and to seize the American dream? And so it sounds like Scott Perry, just like maybe his play cousin Rick Perry, just is spouting a bunch of nonsense.
Robert, go to my iPad, Henry. This is David Duke in July 2020 endorsing Donald Trump and then also endorsing Tucker Carlson for VP. This is former KKK leader David Duke. Now, in 2016, we also saw a KKK newspaper. Who did they endorse? Oh, they endorsed Donald Trump. And so of course, that was in November 2016. Go to my iPad here, right? KKK newspaper declares support for Trump. And so it's called The Crusader, one of the white supremacist group's most prominent publications, published a lengthy endorsement and defense of Trump's message on the front page of its current issue under the headline, Make America Great Again. That's just a reality. When you saw those white boys with their tiki torches in Charlottesville, guess who they were standing with? Donald Trump. And so that's what you're dealing with. Now, is it true historically, the KKK, yeah, those were Southern Democrats, Southern Dixiecrats. Where did many of those Southern Democrats go after the National Democratic Party began to support civil rights? Oh, I quite remember the Southern Manifesto in 1948, where they met in Mississippi. They ran Strom Thurmond as their candidate. And so those Southern Dixiecrats were against the National Party supporting civil rights. They really had to split in 1964 when Senator Barry Goldwater did not support the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And guess what then happened? Many of those Southern Dixiecrats, they became Republican. Those are historical facts, Robert.
Well, not only are these facts, but just the logic behind his statement doesn't make sense, because when they asked him the question, he said, well, these are the radical leftists smearing me. When they talk about the radical left, they're talking about African Americans, Latino voters, young voters, feminists, pro-abortion, transgenders, gay voters. What about that sounds like the KKK to Mr. Perry? I mean, just from a logical point of view, those people sound like they inhabit the same space when it comes to politics. And then this idea where he said the KKK is the military.
All right, Robert. Okay, Robert, 1 second. Robert, your signal froze. Hold on, Robert. Robert, your signal froze. Now go ahead and start. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm back in the game. He talks about replacement theory. That was posited and made popular by David Duke in the United States of America. That's how it got popularized, by the KKK in the late 1980s. The conceptualization around replacement theory is that the white race is somehow separate and sacred. They came to America in order to ensure the progeny of Western European whites because they could not get around the Ottoman Empire to go eastward, and so you had to colonize going westward in order to have access to the Silk Road into the markets of Southeast Asia, and then thereafter, this became the cradle of whiteness in America. This is why during all their conventions, they talk about Western civilization. They're not talking about West Africa. They're not talking about the Iroquois or the Cherokees. They're talking about Western European civilization. And we're seeing this exact same issue rising in European politics. If you look at Giorgia Meloni in Italy, if you look at Viktor Orban in Hungary, who just met with President Trump, if you look at Lukashenko, if you look at the Tories in Great Britain with their Rwanda policy to deport all African migrants to Rwanda, we have this type of white xenophobia, which they believe they are being outproduced and they will become a minority on this earth, and the rest of us will treat them the way they treated the rest of us for the last 500 years. So I would love from Mr. Perry, and more so, maybe Byron Donald was in the room. They say that he, is a very strong voice, and he's the African-American, the Republican Party, to really think about what they're saying and the policies they're putting in place and realize that they are not creating a party that can survive even another decade. There will not be another decade where you can count on old white men to be the backbone of the Republican Party. Lindsey Graham said it a decade ago, they're not making old white men fast enough to keep the Republican Party, and comments and statements and positions like this are what are causing the party and the movement to die.
They are exactly who they are. All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. We come back. We're going to chat about the voter suppression law that has now been passed in Georgia. What will be the impact on the election in November? Also, the South Carolina Supreme Court rules, you have the right to ask cops some questions. They blast a cop in South Carolina for viciously beating and tasing a man who dared to question them on his own property. Yeah, shocking in South Carolina. We'll give the details of that case as well. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, the necessity of believing in things you can't see. It's called faith. It comes in all shapes and sizes, and it's powerful. And it's a big part of being able to live a balanced life.
The valley I experienced being a cancer survivor was one where my footing was completely unstable. I had no idea what to do. And in that instance of not knowing what to do, I had to rely on faith.
That's all next on A Balanced Life, only on Black Star Network.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
Hello, I'm Paula J. Parker. Truly proud on the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder on Disney+. And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Well, Georgia is being Georgia. Republicans there continue their constant and vicious assault on voting rights. I mean, not much has changed in that particular state when it comes to this whole issue. And so what they've done is pass more laws. Now, keep in mind, you've seen a massive voter increase, especially among black folks. But now they're like, no, this is too much. So some Georgia civil rights groups say the new election laws are, you know what, going back to Jim Crow, and they are more about voter suppression. Governor Brian Kemp signed Senate Bill 202, which makes sweeping changes to early and mail-in voting, absentee ballots, food and water for folks who are voting in line, and the state election board's ability to take over any underperforming election office. The bill also removes the Secretary of State from the election board. Joining me now is Melanie Campbell, President and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation. Melanie, you are what? Y'all in Maryland and canvassing?
Yeah, we out here in Prince George's County. Early vote ends tomorrow. And so we out here in Prince George's, headed to Baltimore tomorrow for 3 days.
Go vote. It makes a difference. Go vote.
We out here rolling.
So let's talk about this bill that was passed in Georgia. Now, this is what Kim said, quote, Georgia will take another step toward ensuring our elections are secure, accessible, and fair. They're already secure, accessible, and fair. But the bottom line is they actually want to make it harder. This is what the story says here. The new law imposes new voter identification requirements for absentee ballots, empowers state officials to take over local election boards, limits the use of ballot drop boxes, and makes it a crime to approach voters in line to give them food and water. So, wow, that's actually making it better?
Well, you know, folks are trying to make sure that they can help one candidate. That's at the end of the day. I'm not being partisan, just factual. They're trying to make it easier, hoping that Donald Trump, because he's fumbling all over himself in court and everything else, so they're going to find ways, and they're looking, every time, Roland, we move forward, it goes back to what happened after President Obama was elected. In these red states, in many of them, they just try to change the laws because they can't win fairly. And that's what's happening in Georgia. And so I'm sure a lot of our civil rights lawyer colleagues, Roland, are going to file lawsuits. You're going to make it so that you can make changes 45 days before the election, when it really was, I think it's supposed to be 90 days. So that way you create a lot of confusion, intimidation. Nothing's new under the sun. But we out here at the power of the ballot, and I know folks down there in Georgia, and Deborah and Tasha and Helen and a whole lot of other folks that's out there doing going to fight the fight. But it does make it difficult.
This was a two-page bill that all of a sudden blew up into this larger bill. Right. And then this story here that says that, first of all, any Georgian can lodge an unlimited number of challenges to voter registration and eligibility, okay? Now, we saw what happened the last election when Black Voters Matter had to go to court over the similar thing. Also, you've already seen a lawsuit that has been filed against this law from the New Georgia Project, Black Voters Matter Fund, and Rise Inc. And so again, Republicans keep trying to say, oh, this is about making it fair. No, this is about trying to have as many restraints as possible that target African Americans, people of color, because they're still pissed off what happened in 2020 when Biden and Harris won the state and Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff were Democrats elected to the United States Senate.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing, Roland. They look at how in Georgia, in the 22, every election, they look and they study what worked. Even when they passed those laws, we showed up in 2022 in Georgia. So they rewrite those and say, okay, what else can we, rather than try to organize themselves to win fairly, that's what's happening. And so folks are using Governor Kemp doesn't have to run again. So I'm sure thinking about what's going to happen next for him. So he doesn't mind signing a bill that is not just unfair, but it's the height of voter suppression, and that's what they're doing. I know we are organized, but you can't always organize out a lot of this stuff. You know, when you think from Shelby v. Holder to now, yes, we're winning elections, but there's elections that we're not winning because of this voter suppression.
Indeed. Melanie Campbell, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks, Rebel. Bye.
All right, keep up the good work. I'm going to go to you, Rebecca. Here's the whole deal, Rebecca. Here we go to my iPad. Story here says, as of February, state legislators in 43 states introduced more than 250 bills with restrictive voting provisions. That's according to the Brennan Center for Justice. And the bottom line is, it's Republicans. The Heritage Action for America, they had 20,000 conservative activists lobbying lawmakers trying to make these changes. What Melanie said right there, Rebecca, is correct. They studied what happened, and they said, damn, we lost in 2020. Change the law. Man, we lost some elections in 2022 midterms. Change the law. The strategy of the Republican Party is to shrink the electorate. If they could decrease, they can make it harder for black people and Latinos to vote and young people to vote, then their whole deal is we can win if we shave off 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10,000 people, remove folks from the voting rolls. Their entire election strategy is to shrink the electorate.
Absolutely. We're seeing one particular party in this country try to surgically remove people across the country from the voting rolls. The other thing is, this particular Georgia law, there's some stuff that's on its face that simply runs afoul of federal law. One example, it requires a residential address in registering the vote. Right now, you could fill out a federal voter registration form, and if you are unhoused, i.e. homeless, you can either use the address of the homeless shelter that you may reside, or you could use the intersection of the street in which you live if you indeed actively live on the streets. That's what the federal requirements, it allows for even people who are unhoused to be able to exercise the right to vote. So even on its face, I can see a lot of challenges where there's violations of federal law. Unfortunately, I think the Republican Party has a strategy and a calculus where they think this Supreme Court, where ultimately many of these voting rights cases are going to go up to the Supreme Court, is that there's a calculation of the Supreme Court is not on the side of democracy, not on the side of expansion of voting rights, but is on the side of the party that wants to further restrict people from exercising their right to vote.
Yeah, I mean, and bottom line is they don't want everybody voting. And in fact, Robert, this is in 2021. This Congressman John Kavanaugh out of Arizona, this is what he said. There's a fundamental difference between Democrats and Republicans. Democrats value as many people as possible voting, and then he says they're willing to risk fraud even though they actually can't show it. He said Republicans are more concerned about fraud, so we don't mind putting security measures in place that won't let everybody vote. But everybody shouldn't be voting. Not everybody wants to vote. And if somebody is uninterested in voting, that probably means that they're totally uninformed on the issues. Quantity is important, but we have to look at the quality of votes as well. This is actually Republican political mantra. They make it clear they do not want everybody to vote because Republicans have said if everybody has the right to vote, we lose.
Well, this rolls directly into the first topic we were discussing with regard to the replacement theory and this fear that they have that they will be replaced and they will no longer be a political majority. What you have to do is change the mechanisms while you still have an opportunity to protect your rights and give yourself an outsized voice, even when you're no longer the political or the ethnic majority. We've seen this happen globally. If you look at South Africa at the end of apartheid, the first thing they did was entrench laws within the judiciary and the federal bureaucracy there so they could maintain control of the economy, control of the court systems, and in large part, control of the mechanisms of government, despite not having a political or ethnic majority to do so. We saw this in Kosovo prior to the dissolution of that nation in the late 1990s. This happens again and again globally. We see this currently taking place in Pakistan with Imran Khan and his majority party, where they're attempting to maintain power despite not having the ability to marshal a majority of the vote. This all comes down to, as Mos Def said, you start keeping pace, they start switching up the tempo. They want to ensure that they are, instead of the voters pick.
All right, Robert, we're losing you again. So you still there? Okay.
Yeah, still here.
Okay, all right. So I don't know, Robert, if you're on Wi-Fi, you need to be on a hard line or Ethernet. That's why it keeps going out. But go ahead and finish your comment.
Well, the point is that voters have to be very cognizant of these things taking place. Very few people pay attention to state and local elections. The federal election is all well and good. The action is taking place on the state and local level. We have primaries coming up in Maryland and in Georgia and all across the country. We have state and local races that are going to be affecting people. I encourage folks to get involved right now on these races. Don't wait till November. November is too late. You got to deal with these issues currently, because that is where these decisions will be made.
Scott, here's the reality. Republicans are locking their lips right now. They flat out are saying, hey, if we, matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and just use this language. Back in the early 1900s, when they passed a law in Virginia that kept folks who were incarcerated from voting, the quote from the lawmaker was, we don't want the darkies to vote. That was the quote. The reality is, in 2024, Republican Party, they don't want the darkies to vote. They don't. And matter of fact, they love it when black voter participation goes down. They love to hear black people say, oh, man, I'm not voting. They love it because what it says is everything that we've been doing is frustrating them to no end. And you know what? We're good. And check this out. There's a guy named Paul Weyrich. Paul Weyrich is literally the number one person in the Republican Party when it comes to voter suppression. Heritage Center, still very much involved in politics. This is what Paul Weyrich, and again, this is their go-to person to change voting laws. This is what he said in 1980. Listen to this, speaking to, go ahead and go to my iPad, you'll see it right here. This is Paul Weyrich, the founding father of the conservative movement, addressing the religious right in the fall of 1980.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
Now, maybe some people who are watching miss that because, and I can't reiterate it enough, the person who is speaking, y'all, this is someone who the Republicans to this day, they go to him for advice and counsel on voting laws. who leads these efforts? The Heritage Foundation. That's who he used to be with. This was and is the agenda of the religious right, also known as white conservative evangelicals, and they are the core supporters of Donald Trump. Listen to what he says, because black people, Latinos, women, young people, Asians, Native Americans, he's talking to you.
Have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
Scott, our leverage goes up when the voting population goes down.
Yeah, but I'm sitting there listening to that, and then the prior posting also, I kept thinking how un-American those lines are. No,
Scott.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not. No. It's not un-American.
Whoa.
No. Here's why it's not un-American.
I've read the Constitution several times as a lawyer. It's one man, one vote.
No, Scott, hold up. No, Scott. I know you're a lawyer. One man, one vote. Scott, one man, one vote is not in the Constitution.
Oh, well, I tell you what, it should be.
No. Hold up. Here's what the reason. I'm glad you said this, but I gotta correct you. It's Alpha. Gotta correct this Kappa. Let me help you out right here.
Talk to me, come on.
Because you said this is un-American. No, actually, what he described is actually American. When this country was created, the people who were supposed to hold the power were male landowners. Regular, ordinary people were not supposed to hold power. The creation of the Constitution was the creation of landowners. Originally, House members and Senate members were not elected. They were chosen by state legislatures. In fact, in Bush v. Gore, in that decision in 2000, Supreme Court Justice Anthony Scalia literally said that there is no affirmative right to vote in the Constitution. And so this is what Republicans have been leaning on. And so their desire, they know they can't go all the way back to the original intent of the framers. But their desire is, how can we severely limit it to where we then hold the power? And remember, they pushed forward that crazy legal theory that the courts had no control over the legislature, and the legislature could do whatever they wanted, including overturn the popular vote in a state.
But that doesn't make them right.
I agree.
What makes you wrong, let me just tell you, that the Constitution, see, they're originalists. The Constitution is a living document, right? It is the base of our democracy, but there are three branches of government, including the legislature and the judiciary, that have long since interpreted and added to state constitutions, whose states really do control who votes and how many people can vote, as well as the judiciary that has interpreted the Constitution over 200 plus years. And so if it is a living document, then you've got to continue to interpret it. And I can tell you that more people voting, one man, one vote, may not be in the Constitution, but it certainly is in the case law, it's certainly in state constitutions, and it is fundamentally anti-American if you're going to have a democracy and say you want less people to vote. Now, the reason you want less people to vote if you're a Republican is because your ideas and your policies are unpopular. You cannot win with all of America voting. And so you've got to attack the validity of those who would vote. You've got to try to limit them legally, because otherwise you can't win. Think about it. if the Republican Party's policies and they had support from the majority of Americans, you wouldn't need to suppress a vote. You'd want more people to vote. The Democrats want more people to vote because their policies and what they stand for certainly outnumber those of the conservative movement. So the conservative movement finds themselves in this vortex whereby they believe what they want to believe. They tell themselves these stories, but there are not enough people who believe in that bullshit. There just isn't. And so when I say it's un-American, it is un-American. The fact that you want less people to vote and you want less people to decide who the leaders are in this country, and that somehow the minority view should run the majority of this country because black people and brown people and others, they don't see us as human beings. They may say, yes, I don't see color, I see another human being, but that's not true. If you want to make America great again, you say where we've been, at one point we were 3/5 of a human being. The Republicans certainly would like to see that. And whether it's police brutality or how Republicans' policies offend black and brown people and poor people, you can see that in the end, at the core, they don't see us as human beings, because if they did, they would fundamentally treat us better. They would treat us like they're equal, right? They would, but they don't. And so the fact of the matter is, one man, one vote is the law of the land. And that's why they are voting. So there's so much voter suppression coming from the Republican Party. You know, they coming from the Democrats, Roland. They're coming from Republicans because they can't win otherwise.
But Rebecca, the reason.
Oh, just tell me I'm right about something.
No, you're wrong. I'm telling you.
Right about that. That was a cogent response.
Scott. Again, this is part of the problem. Part of the problem is that, and I'm trying to walk you through it. This is why we're having the voting battles right now, because the U.S. Constitution does not explicitly state that every person has a right to vote. You've had it placed in some state constitutions. Alicia Reese, who was a former state legislator, who's now a Hamilton County legislator, was trying to get a Bill of Rights in Ohio, Rebecca, that would specifically assert that every Ohioan has an absolute right to vote. If that was placed on the ballot and in the Constitution, that provision alone, Rebecca, would invalidate a lot of these voter suppression efforts. And so, hold on, Scott.
Roland, before you go to her.
Scott, hold on. Scott, hold on. So, Scott, hold on. So, when you study the Republican playbook, Rebecca, what they are doing is they start with the premise that because there is no affirmative right to vote in the U.S. Constitution, and because, where Scott is correct, the vote falls to the states, their whole deal is we now get to decide whatever we want when it comes to voting, which is why they oppose the John Lewis voting rights bill and the federal bills, because they say that is federal overreach. People watching need to understand the basis of their argument and what they're doing and why they're doing it, and it's based upon there is no affirmative right to vote in the Constitution. Rebecca.
So the concept of voting is in the Constitution. However, the who, what, when, where, why, and how is not laid out in the Constitution. And I think from the Republican viewpoint, their viewpoint is, hey, we're not taking away the idea of voting. We're just restricting and determining who gets to vote, when do they get to vote, how do they get to vote, and then the different layers, right? And then we've also seen that the federal government has stepped in and said, hey, we regulate federal elections. So what you all do with state and local elections, that's up to the state. But when it comes to federal elections, when it comes to determining who is eligible to vote in federal elections, that is the federal government, full stop. So now we're here. So if we actually want to enshrine the right to vote, the affirmative right to vote, then yes, it needs to be added to the Constitution. Otherwise, we're going to have this every generation pendulum swinging back and forth with court cases, depending on what type of court we currently have. And that's going to further continue to restrict the right to vote or constrict the right to vote, or it's going to continue to expand the right to vote, which is also why we're here. And we're now seeing Republicans are going state by state, and they're trying to change who gets to vote on a fundamental level. But the only particular elements of the ballot box that state by state can be impacted is state and local elections.
Robert, I'm about to invoke former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. He had a book called More Perfect Union. And in that particular book, he talked about the need for several constitutional amendments. And one of those amendments was a constitutional right to vote. Because, to what Rebecca said and to what Scott said, that the reason that we keep having these battles is because there is no constitutional right to vote. It's assumed, it's inferred, but it's not, I'm trying to tell you. So
what about the Voting Rights Act?
I'm sure glad you brought that up because again, Justice Antonin Scalia, who was a leader of the right, go to my iPad, Henry. This is what he said. He called the Voting Rights Act, Section 5, a racial entitlement and a violation of state sovereignty. From this article in the Washington Post, in his view, it unfairly, unnecessarily treats 7 southern states, plus Alaska, Arizona, and parts of 6 others, differently from states not covered by the act. The Wall Street Journal, they had a piece that says, he called the act a form of racial preferment that affected only African Americans while ignoring the white population. So, fast forward to Shelby v. Holder. Justice John Roberts, in invalidating Section 5, they literally suggested that and said that because only certain states were targeted with the Voting Rights Act, that was inherently unfair. They basically, Robert, took the Scalia argument. This is the Scalia argument. They took the Scalia argument and made that the law of the land, and that's how Section 5 was invalidated. And so so even with the Voting Rights Act, and let me be real clear, the Voting Rights Act does not explicitly say you have a right to vote. It says they cannot prevent you from voting. Again, Republicans have been playing this game. Now, going back to former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. Robert, he gave a speech on November 22nd, 2003. Here we go to my iPad. And this is what he said. And this right here, position paper presented at the, and of course, Jessica would know this, at the Fair Vote Claim Democracy Conference at American University's Washington College of Law. He said, quote, most Americans believe that the legal right to vote in our democracy is explicit, not just implicit, in our Constitution and laws. However, our Constitution only provides for non-discrimination in voting on the basis of race, sex, and age in the 15th, 19th, and 26th Amendments, respectively. The U.S. Constitution contains no explicit affirmative individual right to vote. Even though the vote of the people is perceived as supreme in our democracy, because voting rights are protective of all other rights, the Supreme Court in Bush v. Gore constantly reminded lawyers that there is no explicit or fundamental right to suffrage in the Constitution. Quote, the individual citizen has no federal constitutional right to vote for electors for the President of the United States. He writes, Chief Justice William Rehnquist and Associate Justice Antonin Scalia besieged Gore's lawyer with inquiries premised on the assumption that there is no constitutional right of suffrage in the election of a president, and state legislatures have the legal power to choose presidential electors without recourse to a popular vote. Quote, in the eyes of the court, democracy is rooted not in the right of the American people to vote and govern, but in a set of state-based institutional arrangements for selecting leaders. So, Robert, what former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. was advocating for was a federal constitutional right to vote. In the absence of that, the work of Alicia Reese and others was saying, hey, let's put this on the ballot in the states. Because if you now put that in the state constitutions, then every time they try to outlaw ballot boxes and change voting locations, they can't do it. Because the law says you have an affirmative right to vote. That's why Republicans are fighting the affirmative right to vote, because they know as long as there is no federal law nor state law, they can massage and manipulate the voting rules to fit their agenda.
Yeah, and for people who think this is an esoteric exercise, that is the exact segment that John Eastman cited in the Trump fake electors case in order to justify the state legislature of places like Georgia and Arizona to be able to send their own electors, because since there's no federal protected right to vote and the state legislature can pick the electors, the argument is that they could override the electors who were sent to Washington, D.C. So we're going to get a decision on this before from the Justice Department during the Trump fake electors trial. And I just to the point on this right to this federally protected right to vote in the Constitution, Gil Scott Heron said it 50 years ago, the Constitution is a noble piece of paper, but free society is struggling and is dying in vain. Democracy is ragtime on the corner, hoping for some rain. We are living in a situation right now where our democracy is so tenuously affixed, where we can fall from democracy to autocracy into fascism very quickly because of these forces that are seeking to take the gains that we've made over the course of the last century away. And we have to pay attention to that. We have to be motivated by that. I've seen more social media activity about Kendrick Lamar and Drake in the last 2 weeks than anything about any election going on in this country right now. And we cannot be that generation who falls asleep at the switch, that does not pay attention, and gets drugged back into that 19th and that 18th century view of the American democratic experiment, where we're simply going to have government by Elon Musk and by Jeff Bezos and by the millionaire and billionaire class, because those are the new land-owning white men. If Thomas Jefferson and George Washington were around now, they would be tech bros and Wall Street financiers, and those would be the people running our democracy, and that's what we're seeing happening currently. So we have to take more of an active role in ensuring that we are pushing back and fighting just as hard as the folks on the other side, the same way that they spent nearly 75 years trying to overturn women's right to choose and the Voting Rights Act and all the things that we say make up the civil rights movement. We have to be fighting just as hard to oppose it.
See, Scott, this is the thing that was crazy. You had Alicia Reese trying desperately to get this amendment on the ballot. For years. This was several years ago. I had her on the show. I had her on Tom Joyner Morning Show. And you know what? All of these smart-ass, largely white progressives didn't do a damn thing, didn't lift a finger, and they were so fixated on, oh, no, if we just win. Well, your ass can't win if they keep changing the laws. So what happened? Remember, then Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., this is in 2003. What happened? Well, Trump wins Ohio by 450,000 votes over Hillary Clinton in 2016. They control the state Supreme Court. They control the governor's mansion. They control the legislature. You had a conservative chief justice in Ohio who literally chastised Republicans for political gerrymandering. You know what they said? Y'all can kiss our ass. They ignored the state Supreme Court. What you have here, and again, here we go back to my iPad. This is literally what then Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. said. He said point blank, right here, only a voting rights amendment can fix these flaws in our Constitution. The 10th Amendment to the Constitution states, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the state, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Since the word vote appears in the Constitution only with respect to non-discrimination, the so-called right to vote is a state right. Only a constitutional amendment would give every American an individual affirmative citizenship right to vote. Without the constitutional right to vote, Congress can pass voter legislation, and I support progressive electoral reform legislation, but it leaves the states' rights system in place. Currently, Congress mostly uses financial and other incentives to entice the states to cooperate and comply with the law. It's one reason there have been so many problems with the recently passed Help America Vote Act and why many states still have not fully complied with the law. Our states' rights voting system is structured to be separate and unequal. As we saw in the 2000 election, there are 50 states, 3,067 counties, tens of thousands of cities, and many different machines and methods of voting, all separate and unequal. Scott, this is what I would say to progressives if they would truly invest in things properly. Progressives should look at what Desmond Meade and the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition did in Florida with Amendment 4 that passed. Progressives / Democrats should say, Alicia Reese, let's talk about that. Let's put it on the ballot, because Republicans will vote for it. Let's put it on the ballot in the Ohio Constitution mandating an absolute right to vote. Let's put it on the ballot in Michigan. Mm-hmm. Why is that important? Right now, you have a Democratic governor in Michigan, a Democratic legislature, and you have a progressive Supreme Court. Let's put it on the ballot in Wisconsin. Yes, there's a Republican legislature, but you've got a Democratic governor, you have a progressive Supreme Court. Let's put it on the ballot in Pennsylvania, where Democrats control the House and the governor's mansion. And also, you have support there with the Supreme Court. I dare say, even in some of these southern states, if you are able to put it on the ballot, try it there as well. I can't imagine a Republican voting against an affirmative right to a Constitution. The biggest problem I had with progressives, and we saw it in Roe v. Wade, they keep going, oh, that's settled law. It's not settled law unless it is a constitutional amendment, either on the federal level or on the state. You can't go federal, target your battleground states first, because that's where the problem is every damn 4 years.
Well, Roland, you're actually talking. Okay, you convinced me of the state amendment argument. I'm not conceding, but you convinced me.
Yes, you are, but go ahead.
No, I'm not conceding, but I will say this. You're right about that, okay? And that's kind of the longer-term piece, if you will. The shorter-term piece, and why progressives aren't enamored with the heavy lifting the state amendment approach would take, is because these voter suppression laws in southern states and many other states are still being struck down at the state level and the federal level, including gerrymandering issues and other restrictive voter suppression laws are still being struck down at a much higher rate, at least in the last 5 years. Because you've reported on it and stuff. That seems to be piecemeal, but I don't see why we can't do both. You can go for the state amendment in as many states as you can, but continue to litigate these issues because the courts, conservative or liberal, seem to be open and have been fearless about striking down these voter suppression laws.
Well,
not in all cases, but in a lot of cases.
But Rebecca, it all depends.
Yeah, no, you can walk and chew gum at the same time.
But Rebecca, here's the point that Scott, the lawyer he is missing. If you have the constitutional amendment, you're not going to have the law. You're not going to have the lawsuits. Because that's the no, Scott. Yeah. Scott, listen. The reason there are the lawsuits is because there are holes in the law. And so when you have an affirmative constitutional right to vote, Rebecca, now they're like, damn, it's hard now to start screwing with the right to vote because it's now a constitutional amendment. As long as it's a rule, as long as a legislature could change it today and change it tomorrow, it ain't that easy to change a constitutional amendment. And that's my point. Rebecca, go ahead.
But look how hard it is to change the Constitution or to amend it. That's a huge lift.
No, Scott. What you're articulating is exactly the biggest problem that progressives have done. Republicans saw what happened with Ward Conley in California with affirmative action. They funded it, they put it on the ballot, it became law. The Florida Rights Restoration Coalition was really the first time progressives actually got behind a constitutional amendment for the state. Again, this is what drives me crazy, Rebecca, with a lot of progressives. What they do is they go, well, let's just keep electing progressives, but they keep ignoring the law. So they've lost Supreme Court races. It's the Supreme Court will make decisions based upon that constitutional amendment. Right now, everything is wide open for interpretation because it's a hodgepodge of laws. If you have an affirmative right to vote, it's hard to get around that, Rebecca.
So I really appreciate us having a foundational conversation because I think it's really good for the audience to spend some time to really talk about some of the undercurrents so they understand what's happening in the news and why it's happening and why it's playing out the way it is. So I think it's important. There was something in that article from Jesse Jackson that I thought was really interesting that I want to expound on. He talked about the only reason why you see certain states going along with, I guess, federal ways of doing things around elections is because it's a money thing. Either money is being tied to it or it becomes too expensive. So I'm going to give the audience the example of Louisiana. So we all know, or maybe folks don't know, the Constitution spells out every 4 years what the actual day is that we're supposed to have the general for the President of the United States. The Constitution is very specific. It says the first Tuesday after the first Monday in the month of November every 4 years is when we elect the President of the United States of America, right? Very specific. That's why it's, election day is usually on Tuesdays. However, in Louisiana, they observe the federal election the first Tuesday after the first Monday in the month of November every 4 years. However, their state elections, if there's state elections on the ballot, is usually a few weeks after that first Tuesday after the first Monday in the month of November every 4 years. And so what ends up happening is you'll have a surge of Black voters who will show up for the federal ballot, but then they don't show up then for the subsequent state ballot. And Louisiana is also another state where they have runoffs. And the reason why they have runoffs is because it is rooted in Jim Crow history, because once again, it makes it harder for Black folks to elect a candidate of their choice, i.e. a Black person, in office. And so Jesse Jackson is right. Just because states have done it this way doesn't mean that there is a legal reason that they have to do it this way. And so that's a further argument with why there has to be a constitutional amendment to affirmatively say that there is a right to vote in this country. And if it does not happen on the federal level, at least state by state, we do need to have those changes made. To Scott's point, when he said, well, it's hard to get a constitutional amendment. Yeah, that's the point. That also means that there's protection in that, and it's hard to then overturn when that state is now doing stuff to make sure that people are able to expand the right to vote and people, in fact, actually have the right to vote when they're trying to exercise it.
Robert, your final comment, because the discussion that we're having right now is going to dovetail perfectly with our next segment, which is why Republicans are desperately trying to change the Louisiana Constitution. Robert, go.
Well, look, for the last 2 decades, one political party has been in the federal judiciary. We've seen attacks on voting rights. We've seen attacks on every single thing that we call the civil rights movement. This is why constitutional amendments on the state level are so crucial, because those are actually durable. They don't depend on the court. They don't depend on the machinations of the political apparatus. They stand the test of time, and we just need to put the money behind them to go state by state to push these things through.
All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. When we come back, we're going to talk about what Republicans are trying to do in Louisiana. This discussion we just had is a perfect example of, one, what happens when we don't vote, and then they cement power, and then when they cement power, they wield power. Now folks are up in arms, but they should have been up in arms by low turnout rates in the last election. We're going to unpack what's happening in Louisiana next. Folks, don't forget, support us in what we do. The conversation that we just had and we're about to have, they're not having on MSNBC or Fox News or CNN or ABC or NBC or CBS. And ain't nobody else in black-owned media doing it. Because you know why? There are no other daily shows in black-owned media. Ebony doesn't have one. Essence doesn't have one. Blavely doesn't have one. Not TV One. Not Afro. Not Revolt. Not Clio TV. And Black Targeted, not BET. Not BET Her. Not Aspire. Not any of these. And so we've got to have places where we're having these real conversations. And sure, there's some great weekly podcasts out there, but they're once a week. Roland Martin Unfiltered, we're here 5 days a week. We have other daily shows. We have other weekly shows. So when you support this show and this network, you are supporting a black-owned media ecosystem and infrastructure that's about speaking to our issues. I don't give a shit about Drake and Kendrick Lamar going back and forth. I do not care, because that has absolutely no impact on the future of black folks in this country. Everything we're discussing impacts us in every way possible. Send your check and money order, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Civic Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. We'll be right back. First, President Barack Obama's road to the White House. We got about 500 copies of the book available. And so this actually is all of the coverage of the 2008 election. But the other thing is this here. I talked to folks like Malik Yoba, Hill Harper, Erica Alexander, Kevin Lau, Spike Lee, Tatiana Ali. But there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff in here as well, where I talked about some of the stuff that went down at CNN. Also, when you go through here, a lot of the photos that you see in here, photos that I actually shot, photos that were my time at CNN. And so what I decided to do, because one, I published the book and I own it myself, is that so I said, you know what, I'm going to slash the price to $10. And so we're going to have shipping and handling $5.99. I'm going to personally autograph every copy. I'm not reprinting the book. So once we are sold out of these 500, that's it. They're gone. So you can go to RolandSMartin.com/the-first to get a copy of this book. Everybody who orders this book through the website, not on Amazon, only through RolandSMartin.com, I will personally autograph and mail you a copy of this book. It's all of the coverage, the actual interviews that I did with him. And just to show you, of course, when it came out, there's actually even in here the interviews that I did with him and Michelle Obama, which won TV One cable networks its first 2 NAACP Image Awards. And so all of that for $10. Shipping and handling is $5.99. So go to RolandSMartin.com the first and order your copy today.
This is Essence Atkins.
Mr. Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon.
It's me, Sherry Shepherd, and you know what you're watching.
You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
The hot shot. All right. All right. Hashtag we tried to tell you. When we were talking about the Louisiana gubernatorial election and all the statewide seats, Gary Chambers was talking about it. We were warning y'all. And when I said, beware of sitting your ass at home, because stuff is going to go down that you don't like, is playing out. Y'all, Jeff Landry ain't been the governor for 6 months. And hardcore MAGA right-wing extremists out of their damn mind Republicans are going mad in Louisiana. They just rejected a rape and incest exception for abortion in the state. Jeff Landry has been threatening to withhold critical infrastructure funds from the city of North Carolina unless the DA prosecutes women who have abortions. Now, Republicans, now it's the Holy Grail. They are moving expeditiously to rewrite the state constitution. The state house just voted to advance the bill calling for a constitutional convention. The bill is now headed to the Senate for debate. If passed, the constitutional convention will take place in August. Trust me, folks, they don't need any Democrats' opinion or advice on nothing. Dillard University political analyst Dr. Robert Collins joins us now from New Orleans. Doc, glad to have you here. You know, it drives me crazy when we talk about this stuff and people say, man, you just trying to get us to vote Democrat, you on the plantation, man, that stuff don't mean nothing, we not gonna be hurt, we done survived Republicans in power before. When you start talking about changing the Constitution, what did Rebecca say? Now, when you enshrine it in the Constitution, you can't just change it with the legislature because it is locked into place.
It's locked into place. Once the Constitution is rewritten, the only way you can change it is to call another constitutional convention, which of course takes supermajorities in both houses of the state legislature, and then a full vote of the people in a statewide election.
Meaning, if Democrats clawed back and took the supermajority away from the Republicans, it wouldn't matter because they would still be in power. And if it doesn't pass the House and the Senate, it don't matter.
Yeah, the Democrats would have to get supermajorities in both houses, which is not going to happen.
Walk people through the type of dastardly, evil bills these Republicans have been quickly advancing. And folk watching and listening, I need y'all to understand, when I say quickly, I'm talking about they are moving at lightning speed, Robert.
Mm-hmm. Well,
whoa, we just had okay, all right.
We had a...
Okay, actually, Robert, hold 1 second. We had a power surge, so now start your question over again, your answer over again. Go ahead.
Okay, so, everything the governor said he was going to do, he was going to do. So we had a crime session first. That was a special session. So they did away with parole, did away with probation. So basically, you have to serve your entire sentence. Now, they actually reversed a lot of the criminal justice reform measures passed, interestingly enough, with bipartisan support by the previous administration. So things like decriminalizing small amounts of marijuana, bills that stopped automatically putting mugshots online until those cases had been adjudicated. All of these bills have, again, that were just passed a couple of years ago with a lot of Republican votes. All of these bills are now being repealed. We have probably the strictest abortion law in the United States. I know there are a lot of very strict abortion laws in the United States now in the South, but ours is probably the strictest because it has no exceptions for rape or incest. I mean, it's a pretty absolutist law. There's legislation now to outlaw the abortion pill. So if in theory, if citizens were to get abortion pills in the mail, they could send police, and if the police catch you with it, you can be charged with a crime, even though you would have had the pill shipped in from somewhere that's legal, and they're still legal under federal law. So just very, very draconian conservative measures, which again, it doesn't surprise me at all, because the governor said he was going to do these things. So this is not a shock. It's not like the governor was hiding who he is and then he jumped up and said, oh, here I am, I'm going to do all this secret stuff. No, the governor said exactly what he was going to do. So, and he's just doing, he's doing what he promised his voters to do.
Well, see, this reminds me of, so this is like when Democrats are like, oh my God, I can't believe they overturned Roe v. Wade. I'm like, they've been telling your dumb ass for 50 years, that's what they plan was. So it wasn't like it was a surprise. But again, and so what is interesting to me, when I see these people now reacting, I'm sitting there going, see, this is what happens when you spend more time focusing on going to the homecoming game on election day than actually going out to vote. Then this is what happens when people are like, well, man, we didn't know that was an election. Well, a bunch of other people clearly knew that was an election. This is the frustration for me is trying to get our people to understand we can't be operating on the defensive and going, oh my God, what is happening, when the man said I was going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's interesting is just recently we had a committee form of former elected officials. There's at least one former mayor. There's some other former local in the city of New Orleans, supposedly to protect the city of New Orleans from any home rule charter changes or any attacks against our governing structure from the governor. But my first question was like, okay, well, where were these people during the election?
Right.
Instead of organizing now, what they should have been doing if these were issues that if they didn't want the home rule charter to change, they didn't want governance structures to change, they should have been registering the people to vote and then making sure people turned out on election day during the gubernatorial election. And this is nothing new. I mean, in recent elections, in Orleans Parish, in the city of New Orleans, if we can get 20% of the vote to turn out, we're doing great. So it's just 25%. That would be outstanding for us. And so we just see continual low voter turnout in Orleans Parish, and now we have public officials organizing because they're upset that the home rule charter might get changed. But this organization should have been, months ago, really years ago. And the primary organizing that you should have done is getting people registered to vote and then making sure people turn out on election day so that their voices can be heard.
Well, and this is why, for me, the reason why this is just sort of like just grates at me is because I hate playing on defense. I hate being emotional when, if you go on offense, you can stop it from happening before it goes in. Look, you may not prevent the Republicans from controlling both chambers, but you damn sure could have stopped it from having a supermajority, which now means they got to at least talk to the other side to get something passed. Now, they ain't got to talk to anybody. They can do whatever the hell they want to and tell Democrats, y'all sit over there and talk all y'all want to, we gonna run this show, and y'all just sit there and be quiet.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. The Republicans do not need a single Democratic vote to pass any of those bills. They don't need a single one. All they have to do is just hold their
caucus.
Yeah, hold their caucus together. I was just saying my title was I had a different title just now.
So what about what about the this Constitutional Convention? I'm gonna go to questions from my panel in a second. What about simple majority, supermajority, or is it 2/3? So can Democrats stop anything, or can Republicans just run roughshod do whatever they want. So what are the rules of this constitutional convention?
Yeah. So because okay, so it takes 2/3 votes in both houses to call a constitutional convention, which is and so they've already passed it in the House. They're debating it in the Senate now. There were some amendments made to the governor's version. It's going to pass the Senate. We don't know exactly what form it's going to pass. I'm sure the Senate's going to introduce their own amendments. It's going to be changed. It's eventually going to pass in some form, and then all of the state legislators are going to become delegates to this convention. The governor, under the current legislation, he will appoint 27 members, and the 27 members from outside of the legislature will become delegates, and then they will just sit as a body, and then it'll again, under the legislation could change, but under the current status of the legislation, basically the committees will meet, and the Constitution will be written or rewritten, and then it just has to be passed by majority vote. But then, of course, it has to be put on the ballot, and it has to be voted on by the citizens of Louisiana, and the citizens of Louisiana have to ratify it by an up or down vote, so by a simple majority. So right now, it'll be on the ballot during the November presidential election, and the citizens would get a vote, and it would be ratified by a yes or no, up or down vote of the citizens.
So they want to have this constitutional convention in this August, and it go on the ballot this November.
Correct.
So if black folks rise up, and if sane white folks rise up, whatever they do can actually be stopped and not implemented, but that's going to require turnout.
Correct. I think the best shot if for people to stop it, I don't really, at this point, I don't think you can stop it, the new Constitution from being rewritten. The chance to stop it will be when it actually gets put on the ballot, because then it's just a simple majority vote, it's an up or down vote. So then it's a question of whether or not people decide to turn out and vote again. And I mean, let's be clear, there are a lot of white folks too that I think that are going to turn out, that are not happy about it, not so much about the concept we don't need a new constitution, but Roland, last time we rewrote our constitution, which is 774, it was a 2-year process, and it involved sort of like a road show where legislative committees traveled all over the state and asked citizens what they wanted in the Constitution. And there were a lot of public meetings, and there was a lot of. Keep in mind, this would be a 2 to 3 week process. So there are a lot of people, including a lot of Republicans, who are saying, "Wait a minute, this is too fast. This is, we're not going to have enough time to have public input of this bill." So I think that if something's going to sink the bill, or something's going to sink the new Constitution being ratified, that's what might sink it, because a lot of people are saying it's being rushed, and there's just not enough citizen input as to what they need.
Robert?
So on that point, what is the plan in order to try to push these things through? Is it more public education? Is it engaging more of the state legislature? Because I believe for this works, it can be complicated around the country.
Well, you mean what is the plan of the Republicans to pass the Constitution? Or?
Exactly, because I've been talking to conservatives for years. They want to have a constitutional convention or convention of the state. They want to reform our Constitution, not to 1789. They want to reform our Constitution to the Articles of Confederacy and enshrine white supremacy in our Constitution, and do that on a nationwide level. What is the plan? If they're doing that there, I believe that we'll start metastasizing nationwide, and we'll start seeing this be the norm as opposed to the aberration.
Yep.
Sure. I think, well, their plan is, I think, and this is just my view, I think their plan is that a lot of people are not paying attention right now. We just saw a poll by one of the local state pollsters who did a poll and listed, what is your number one issue. And of course, most people said crime. Secondary, people said economy and jobs. Only 1% of the respondents to the poll said that the Constitution or the Constitutional Convention was an issue of theirs. So I think the people that are trying to write the Constitution, their assumption is that most people are not paying attention right now because they just don't care. And so I think their hope is, it's a complicated process. It's a complicated process. And so their hope is that they can go ahead and get it passed and put it on the ballot. And then they know they'll have very high Republican turnout because Trump always carries our state, and he will in the next election. And so they know they're just going to put it on the ballot, and they're just going to say, oh, by the way, while you're there voting for President Trump, please vote for this constitutional rewrite. Knowing that most people have not read it and don't know what's in it, and will just go along with what their governor tells them to do.
Rebecca.
Thank you for being on the show tonight. I'm concerned about the Black people in Louisiana. So right now, the Democratic Party in Louisiana is impotent and feckless. The Republican Party in Louisiana is power hungry. So do Black folks take over the Democratic Party and try to fight back, or they cut a deal with the Republicans? What's the best path forward for the Black communities in Louisiana?
Well, I can tell you. So we just did get a new chair of the Louisiana Democratic Party. The old chair was seen as being ineffective by Democratic activists, and so there was an election for new members of the state central committee, and a lot of community organizers organized and ran. And so they removed the former chair, and we got a new chair of the Louisiana Democratic Party who is African American. He's a lawyer and a former state representative, former colonel in the U.S. Army, and so he's and so we'll see what he does with the party. He's brand new. He's only been, I guess, about a month. He's only been there 3-4 weeks. So we'll see what But the entire party is going to have to be reformed from the bottom up, not just from the top down, to become an organized party again. Now as far as cutting a deal with the Republicans, I can tell you. So in past legislatures, the legislative Black caucus did occasionally need to cut deals with the Republicans to get their issues taken care of. And they did. Basically, they served as the swing vote between factions of Republicans. So you had the very conservative Republicans and the somewhat conservative Republicans, and they would fight over committee chairmanships or who got to be speakers. And the Black caucus would come together, and they would serve as the swing vote in those disputes, and in return they would get some committee chairmanships and some of their issues. But the problem is now that the Republicans have supermajorities in both houses for the first time, literally for the first time in Louisiana history. The issue now is that they don't really have to play ball with the Black caucus anymore. Now, what's going to happen eventually? At some point in time in the future, there will be more factionalism, and the Republicans will fight amongst themselves, and so then the Black caucus, and those guys are normally pretty smart about things because they have to be to survive. They will come in and they will serve mediators and they will serve as tiebreakers on some of those votes. So I'm not saying that I don't think it would be accurate to say the Black caucus doesn't matter. They still matter because they do control, they do vote together and have a block of votes, but they don't have as much influence that they had in previous state legislatures, just because the reality that the Republicans have the supermajorities in both houses.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yep.
So I'm not, with all due respect, I'm not talking about the Black caucus because that is largely the Black Democratic caucus. I'm talking about actually Black communities in Louisiana because, quite frankly, some of the problems that we're seeing with the Democratic Party there, it's not just because of the chair that Republicans have a supermajority. That means the entire party is in shambles and that there's problems. So specifically, taking this out of the Democratic Party apparatus, really, what should Black communities in Louisiana do? Because I don't know that Black communities have a few months to wait to see what these new folks, because, you know, not everybody is like us, and all skin folk ain't kinfolk. So really, what should the average everyday Black person in Louisiana do in this type of situation to make sure that their family is protected moving forward?
Well, I mean, you know, what people should have been doing all along is engaging in the process and learning what's going on and actually registering and turning out to vote. Now the community is in. If you're on the liberal or the Democratic side of the ledger, you know, you're gonna, or if you are a Black person, just in general in Louisiana, you're going to find yourself on the short end of the stick simply because of lack of voter turnout over the last 5, 10, 15 years. I mean, voter turnout has just been declining. So it's you know, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a few election cycles. And now keep in mind, I mean, I'm a political analyst guy, so I know you're probably asking a more general question about community organizing, et cetera. But again, I'm a pollster and analyst and a political guy, so I have to stay in my lane and talk about political issues. But from a political standpoint, I just think it's going to be going to be a long slog, you know, back into influence, and it's just gonna. But it's not going to take magic. It's just going to take people to turn out to vote. I mean, we have in every election, Black folks are only turning out at about 15 to 25%. Mayor of New Orleans, we have a mayor election in New Orleans, and only about 30% of the Black vote turnout for mayor of New Orleans, for the mayor's election of New Orleans, right? Local election, who the mayor is directly affects your life, and we can only get about 30% of our voters to turn out.
Well, okay. So before I go to Scott, so with that said, who the hell in Louisiana is putting in the work? I'm sorry. Look, you've got former Congressman Cedric Richmond. You've got current Congressman Troy Carter. You've got Mayor Cantrell. You've got city council members. You've got Black folks in other parts of the state. Who the hell? What is the organization that's looking to do what Stacey Abrams and her group did in Georgia to say, wait a minute, we got a bunch of Black folks in Louisiana. Somebody has to organize and mobilize them. Who's actually doing it? Take party out. Do you have 1 or 2 or 3 grassroots groups that are saying this is our number one priority?
We have grassroots groups. Most of the active grassroots groups that we have are more involved in things like trying to create a second Black congressional district. But that's really a legal battle. I mean, that's been fought in the courts. I'm talking about who do you see who's really doing the work on the ground? And again, looking at what they did in Georgia to say, hey, you can't win jack 15, 18, 20%. I know Black Voters Matter is doing some stuff in Louisiana. Anybody else that's trying to create a statewide infrastructure that's not tied to party, but that's tied to a grassroots mobilization? Do you know of anybody? If it's happening, Roland, I have not seen it.
Well, right there, see, again, for me, I mean, you're the preeminent Black political scientist in the damn state, and if you don't know, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Scott?
Yeah, real quick. Are there Democrats who are going to be delegates to the convention, or just Republicans? Any of them up for re-election? Chance?
Yeah. So that, of course, there will be, all of the Democrats that are in the legislature will automatically become delegates. Attention. And interestingly enough, the governor in his 27 appointees that he's making, he has included a lot of Democrats. I guess he's trying to show inclusivity. So for example, all the black mayors of all of the cities are going to be delegates. The mayor of Baton Rouge is a delegate who's a black female. The chair of the Democratic Party, even though he's not an elected official, the former elected official, but he's not elected, he is actually going to be a delegate to the convention. Yeah. So there will be a good number of black folks on the convention. Now, are they up for re-election? The problem is, so we just had our statewide elections in the state of Louisiana. We literally just had them a few months ago. So all of our state legislators are locked in for another 3.5 years.
Yep.
Because
Roland.
Elections.
Yeah, Roland. The other thing is, I have not heard our guests talk about legal strategies or where the lawyers are in all of this. Have you heard of any legal strategies or talk to the lawyers for civil rights and economic justice or groups like that about how to slow this train down through the court system?
Well, but before Robert asks that, what you have seen, you've seen the NAACP LDF was really taking the lead on the couple of things. One, the congressional creation of the 2nd Congressional District. That was that battle. You also, of course, have the battle going with the creation of the 2nd Supreme Court position as well. And so that's where a lot of the legal stuff. Now, in terms of the Constitutional Convention, I haven't heard any groups targeting that. But Robert, go ahead.
Well, okay, so yeah, so right now, of course, most of our civil rights lawyers are tied up with the federal legislation trying to create a 2nd black congressional district, and that's a very hot issue right now. That's there was a filing this morning on that for the circuit. So that's what most of them are concerned with right now. Now, as far as trying to stop the Constitutional Convention, I think what you're going to see there, we haven't seen any lawsuits yet because they don't know exactly what the legislation is going to look like. It's in the House right now. It's going to the Senate. Now, once it passes the Senate and then it gets signed into law, that's when the civil rights lawyers will take a look at it. And if it looks like anything is in there that's going to be disenfranchising to black voters, then I'm sure they will take action then. So to answer your question, I do expect there to be some legal activity. I do expect some lawsuits to be filed. It's just that they're waiting to see what the final form of the legislation is going to look like, what the final organizing call of the Constitutional Convention is going to look like, and then they're going to go ahead and they're going to file their lawsuit. So I think lawsuits are coming.
All right, Dr. Robert Collins, always a pleasure. I certainly appreciate it, man. Thanks a bunch. We'll keep happening what's there. But again, it's way too many black people in Louisiana for us not to be a significant player because we're not exercising our power as a collective group.
Yeah. 1/3 of the population. 1/3 of the population.
Ah, sad. All right, Doc, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you.
All right, folks, we come back Monday. Vice President Kamala Harris is in Detroit. She talked about debt relief in a couple of areas. A lot of folks not paying any attention to it. So for all the people who say she's not doing anything, I got something to say about that. We'll be right back on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. A lot of y'all have been asking me about the pocket squares that we have available on our website. You see me rocking the Shabori pocket square right here. It's all about looking different. And look, summertime is coming up. Y'all know, I keep trying to tell fellas, change your look, please. You can't wear athletic shoes every damn wear. So if you're putting on linen suits, if you're putting on some summer suits, have a whole different look. The reason I like this particular pocket square, the Shabori, is because it's sort of like a flower and looks pretty cool here versus the traditional boring silk pocket squares. But also I like being a little different as well. So this is why we have these custom-made feather pocket squares on the website as well. My sister actually designed these after a few years ago. I was in this battle with Steve Harvey at Essence, and I saw this at a St. Jude fundraiser. I saw this feather pocket square, and I said, well, I got some ideas. So I hit her, and she sent me about 30 different ones. And so this completely changes your look. Now, some of you men out there, I had some dudes say, oh, man, I can't wear that. well, if you ain't got swagger, that's not my problem. But if you're looking for something different to spruce up your look, fellas, ladies, if y'all looking to get your man a good gift, I've run into brothers all across the country with the feather pocket squares saying, see, check mine out. And so it's always good to see them. And so this is what you do. Go to RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. You can order Shibori pocket squares or the custom-made pocket squares. Now, for the Shiboris, we're out of a lot of the different colors, and I think we're down to about 200 or 300. So you want to get your order in as soon as you can, because here's what happened. I got these several years ago, and the Japanese company signed a deal with another company, and I bought them before they signed that deal, and so I can't get access to any more from the company in Japan that makes them. And so get yours now. So come summertime, when I see y'all at Essence, y'all could be looking fly with the Shibori pocket square or the custom-made pocket square. Again, RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. Go there now.
It's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show.
This is your boy, Earthquake.
And you're tuned in to
Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
So Monday, I was in Detroit with Vice President Kamala Harris for the second leg of her economic empowerment tour. There were a number of things that she talked about at the Charles Wright Museum for African American History, but I think a couple of things got overlooked by a lot of folks. Play it.
We have also focused on removing obstacles. One big obstacle to wealth building is debt. While an issue for many people, Black Americans are twice as likely to have medical debt and more likely to struggle to repay student loan debt. For anyone carrying debt, we know it is much more difficult then to save for a house, to grow a small business, to build intergenerational wealth. And it just plain makes people feel like they can never get ahead. So President Biden and I have made debt forgiveness a central pillar of our economic agenda. And we have already forgiven about $500 million of medical debt for hundreds of thousands of Americans across the nation. And in Wayne County, Michigan, we will forgive an additional $700 million of medical debt for as many as 300,000 people. And there's more. We are also implementing a rule, and this is critically important. We are also implementing a rule that medical debt cannot be used in calculating your credit score. Which means medical debt cannot be the reason someone is denied a car loan, a home loan, or a small business loan. On the issue of student loan debt, we have also forgiven nearly $160 billion for more than 4.5 million people. On average, more than $30,000 per person and $70,000 for our public servants like nurses, firefighters, and teachers. And God knows we don't pay them enough as it is, so it's only right. And please, to everyone here, all the leaders, help us get the word out. On the student loan debt issue, your student loan debt can be forgiven even if you didn't graduate. Please help us get the word out, because it's only logical. Think about it. How many people have to drop out because they can't afford tuition? They don't graduate and they still have the debt. So Detroit, I'll end with this. All of our work, whether it be debt forgiveness, affordable housing, government contracts, or access to capital, it is all guided by a fundamental principle. President Biden and I believe in you.
We believe in the people of our country. And so we believe that it is a great return on the investment to invest in the people of America and to invest, as we have discussed today, in your business, in your financial security, and your wealth. And this approach is working. Since taking office, we have seen record Black small business growth, and we have created more than 2.5 million new jobs for Black workers. And since 2019, Black wealth is up 60%. So President Biden and I are clear. These are not only our accomplishments, they are yours. It is the result of your drive, your creativity, and your power. And so I'll end with this, Detroit. Together, let us continue to invest in the ambition and aspirations of our people, of the American people. Together, let us continue to help folks create wealth and achieve financial freedom. And together, let us continue to build a nation where every person has the opportunity to compete, prosper, and thrive.
Rebecca, I was on the Earn Your Leisure YouTube channel, and they were discussing, they of course were asking questions of her last week. And it was stunning to me to look at the comment section and the sheer ignorance of these people. Oh, she's a failure. She's awesome. She's awful. She don't care about Black people. Biden and Harris, it's the same old, same old. They not doing anything. And I'm sitting here going, are y'all nuts? Facts are facts. So it's crazy to me when I see these reactions and folks are just in denial about what we actually see are undeniable facts about what is actually happening.
So we saw this administration erase a lot of student loan debt. My concern is that if it is a Trump administration next year, does Trump claw back those forgiveness of loans and tell people, hey, actually, you really do need to pay your balance? Because just like we talked about earlier, these are executive orders that are moving policy. These aren't specific pieces of legislation that move policy. These aren't things that are enshrined into the Constitution that's moving policy. So what's really unfortunate for Black America is that right now we're at the whims of whoever is in the White House, because we're not seeing legislation that's being moved, that's proactively advancing some of the Black agenda. And so now when people go to the ballot box in November, they got to think about that calculus. If we know that Congress is effectively broken and it's not moving legislation the way it should be moving or the way it moved legislation 20 years ago, then at that point, you got to figure out who do you want in the White House. Do you want it to continue with the way it's going now, even if you don't necessarily like how it's going? Is it better to continue on this path, or is it better to switch back and revert back to what we saw in the Trump presidency? I will say it is unfortunate that these are the choices and that there isn't a better choice here, but right now these are the choices.
And Republicans have made it clear they don't believe in any student loan debt relief, any medical debt relief. And so if you have 4 more years of Biden-Harris, you're likely to see more of that debt relief as opposed to none.
I wish they would talk about. I'm sorry,
Robert, go ahead.
You're absolutely right, Roland. I think that what Democrats have not figured out yet is how much of a game changer the stimmy was for many people in the Black community. That they don't see a direct check, a direct payment sent to them with the name of the president written on it. They think that nothing is getting done. There's a lot of people who remember the PPP loans. They just remember everyone had Gucci belts and new rims and everything was wonderful for about 6 months. Then people started going to prison and people spend a lot less time thinking about those sorts of things. And in large part, the problem this administration has had is most of the things that they have done are things that that you have to go look for to see. You have to be someone who went to college and has student loan debt to understand the impact of student loan reform. You have to be one of these individuals that has directly benefited from the Biden program versus a check showing up in the mail and everybody enjoying it. And particularly in our community, when you have Sexy Red, when you got Waka Flocka Flame, when you got Teddy Riley, when you got Lil Uzi Vert, all talking about the things that Trump did for them and how the hood is behind him, quote unquote. Even you had to get into Stephen A. about that issue.
Right.
That it's a messaging issue that the White House has still not figured out how to counteract and how to push back, and also a legislative issue because many people, unless they see a stimmy show up, they're not going to believe the things are being done.
Scott, real quick.
Yeah, just the whole messaging issue. That's enough for anybody to vote for the administration. And, this is the first time I've even heard about it. I wish they would tie their messaging and the elimination of medical debt and student loan debt to how that impacts America's economy and makes the economy stronger. I wish that would be a dual message.
All right. Let's talk about Arkansas. An Arkansas judge ruled high school teachers cannot be disciplined or prevented from teaching topics regarding critical race theory. The Republican-led Arkansas legislature passed the Literacy, Empowerment, Accountability, Readiness, Networking, and School Safety Act, long-ass title, known as LEARNS Act. The law will prohibit public schools from teaching diversity, equity, and inclusion and critical race theory. Joining us is David Hinosa, Director of the Educational Opportunities Product and the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. So, David, okay, so they passed this. What now?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
What now? They passed it. What now?
Yeah, they passed the LEARNS Act, and teachers and students, brave teachers and students, stood up against the great state of Arkansas to slap that law back down and put the state back in its place. The state said, you can't teach CRT, you can't teach related ideologies in classrooms because that's a form of indoctrination. And the court, and it was a federal court that we were in front of on a motion for preliminary injunction just last week, issued its decision today, finding that he was going to partially enjoin this state law, this certain provision of the LEARNS Act, and allow teachers to go back to doing the great, honest, and accurate teaching that they have, both of past and present day discrimination, among so many other topics that students deserve to be taught about, but were prohibited because of this terrible law.
So how much of the law gets invalidated? Or is it all of it or parts of it?
So here's what's interesting about this law and the case. So just last fall, the state said, well, under this law, we have to stop indoctrination and CRT. And we see the AP African American Studies course, which is in its second year of being a pilot course, across the country. And they say, well, we're going to de-designate this as an AP course because we think that some of these topics like resistance and resilience and intersection and identity run afoul of this. And we need to further investigate this, right? Fast forward now to after the students and teachers and the Arkansas State Conference of the NAACP have filed a lawsuit and then moved for a preliminary injunction. Now, all of a sudden, the state starts walking back this law. The whole thrust of the law that was supposed to stop CRT, was supposed to stop woke ideology, according to Governor Sanders and Secretary of Education Jacob Oliva. Now, all of a sudden, they're filing court papers saying this does not stop CRT discussions in classrooms. If you're just discussing it as an idea, as a framework, that's fine. You just can't indoctrinate students. So we now have the state of Arkansas on the record and as part of the court's own order stating specifically that, yes, teachers can teach CRT and related ideologies so long as they're not indoctrinating them. And that goes for all different types of ideologies, not just, frameworks. So it has extremely narrowed the scope of this law. And again, provided, much needed comfort by teachers like Mr. Gilbert and Ms. Walls, who we represent in this case, who really want to dig deeper into many of these issues that, again, students deserve the right to know and learn all of this information and ideas, whether it's bad or good, let them digest that and build their own perspectives out of it.
What could be the excuse me, what could be the impact of this decision by this federal judge on other lawsuits across the country?
Well, the court came down very strongly in favor of students' right to receive information and ideas. So we represent a couple of individual students, Sadie Bell and Giselle, who have put their names on this lawsuit, as well as student members of the Arkansas State Conference. And it's a very strong, powerful ruling that says, yes, students have a First Amendment right to receive the information and ideas that the states like Arkansas have essentially marshaled forward this law through purely ideological and politically based reasons, not connected to education. And that sets a very strong precedent that potentially, other federal courts, including our court in the state of Oklahoma, where we have another case where we represent the Oklahoma State Conference of the NAACP, the American Indian Movement, and others challenging that state's laws. But I think that that's a very powerful ruling, again, coming from this judge towards the tail end of the school year, that wasn't going to stand for the state trying to filter and censor critical discussions in the classroom that it disagreed with.
Last question, does Arkansas plan to appeal this decision?
Yeah, I don't know. They put out a statement today saying that they're glad, that the court issued a very narrow injunction in this case, applying to only 2 students, although, again, all teachers are free to teach CRT and related ideologies. You would not think that they would want to appeal that particular decision. They'll probably be moving forward for motions to dismiss. But frankly, we feel the one thing that they need to do is get the word out to its teachers all across the state about how narrow this law really means, because all we have is the hot air rhetoric from Governor Sanders and others in state leadership saying what this law meant prior to these lawsuits. We now need them to correct themselves on the record.
All right, then. David Hinosa, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
All right, that is it for us. Let me thank Scott. Let me thank Rebecca, Robert as well. Always a great conversation. And I'm quite sure after the show, Scott's going to go brush up on constitutional law when it comes to voting.
No, that was a good discussion. I deeply appreciate it, especially coming from a non-lawyer like you. You convinced me of your one argument, but the broader argument, I was right about overall. So God bless you, Roland.
Okay, nice try. Nice try. Nice try. That's your way of saying, damn, that boy can read. Robert, go ahead.
A budding lawyer. My budding lawyer friend, I call you.
Just to remind people, early voting is going on in many states around the country, so make sure you check the early voting dates. We have an election coming up in Atlanta, May 21st. Make sure you're registered. Make sure you vote. Same thing with Maryland coming up. Last day of early voting is there tomorrow. Find out about your candidates. Make sure you're getting out there and vote. And donate money to candidates. The other side
hey,
of the
man, did you get my money?
Hundreds of thousands. I did not. I will after the show make sure.
I better get a thank you note because I gave you a nice piece of change. I can't even vote for you. I did. Yes, I gave Roland some money last month too. I didn't get a thank you note from him.
Hold up. Hold up. You gave some. Wait. Hold up. Now, see. When
they sent me an invoice.
Wait a minute. Hold up. Let me see right here. See, when somebody start running their mouth, see, I keep receipts.
I did.
Hold on. I'm checking.
Thank you note.
I'm checking.
He sends me an invoice.
I'm sorry. You gave money when?
I gave money last month. No question. I ain't got no reason to lie.
Henry, go to my iPad.
Yeah, go to your iPad.
So, as y'all see right here, I don't see nothing where it says Scott gave money.
If you sent me an invoice, it got paid. Those people you looking at right now, you didn't send them an invoice.
No, I see. All these emails say Scott Bolden. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I don't see no invoice where it says Scott gave some money.
Stop rolling. Okay.
I'm just saying.
If you're giving everybody else money, I feel left out. If you gave Roland money,
I don't see nothing.
Money.
Hey,
Rebecca, you got to run for something. We need to do the arena.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on, Henry, don't show it yet, because I don't want sir, no, not saying I don't want certain things shown. I don't want certain things shown. But let's see here. Is his name on it? I'm checking. So I just discovered this here. So I'll go ahead and give. So Scott actually gave some money. Scott actually gave some money. That's a lower amount than he gave 2 years ago. But he gave some money. See, he lost the bet. See, y'all, about 2 years ago, Scott lost the big bet, and so he had to pay up. He was running his mouth, and he didn't think I heard what he said. Then I held him to it.
Thank you.
So
say thank you. That's all you got to say. Say thank you, Scott.
So let me say this. Scott, hold up. I'll say it. Scott, I appreciate you making a donation to the show after I paid you some legal work. So I appreciate that. So that's you returning some money back to the show based on some legal work that I paid for. No. I gave you. You can't say I ain't thank you.
And I give Scott an unequivocal thank you. Thanks, Scott.
See, told you.
Robert, you checked? Robert, you checked?
You got to make sure. See, it said Allen. I was looking for Scott. It said Allen on it, so I had to make sure.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
That's my government name. That's my government name.
You know his name is Aloysius. All right, then. All right, y'all. We out. I appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. And for all of y'all who watching the show, don't forget, listen, our target goal is very simple. Target goal is to get 20. You know, some of these people are so dumb, they don't even understand fun. Some fool will say on the YouTube, Roland is narcissistic. Fool is called levity. Learn to laugh. It ain't that damn hard. All right, y'all. So first of all, let me see here. Make sure we got 1,000 likes. All right, YouTube, y'all lacking. Why we got 868 likes? Okay, y'all got 2 minutes to get us to 1,000 likes. Y'all been running your mouths, making all these comments, but y'all ain't hitting the like button. Y'all need to hurry up before I get done. Okay, our goal is very simple, to get 20,000 of our fans on contributing on average $50 a year. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. That's supporting this show. That's supporting shows from our other weekly hosts. We've got a couple of other shows that we want to launch in the pipeline. We're fighting the battle. I've been meeting with Group M, Publicis, Horizon, trying to get OMD on the calendar. We've got we're locking out meetings with Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble. Doing some work with General Motors. We got, of course, our partnership with McDonald's. And so we're trying to expand our roster of advertisers. We're working on it, but your support is absolutely critical. If you want to see the kind of critical work that's important, hey, support us. Send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Also, you can download the Black Civic Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Shout out our donors. These are the folks who have given during the show to Cash App. Claudia Douglas Smith, we appreciate it. We also have Talisa Slayton, Leon Wilson, Marlon Blackman. We also have Pamela Stardust. Keep the slate up. Host to give. Faika Munira, Yolanda, Terrell Foster. Also, Amani Woods, Bernadette McDonald, Shafar Flowers, Christopher Lee, Juanita Irvin, Denise Montgomery, Dwayne Collins, Cherry Jackson, Rachel Jones, Connie Beasley, Catherine Fuqua, Wheelchair Ability, Patricia, Sheila Artist, Letitia White, Loy Wright, Lloyd Beasley, Veronica Jackson. So I want to thank all of you to supporting our show. Folks, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Y'all hurry up, YouTube. You got 4 more before we hit 1,000, then I'm going to go. We're at 996. What's taking so long? 4 y'all hit the like button, we hit 1,000. That's our target goal every single show. So y'all come on, hit the like button. Let's go. Don't forget, also, get White Fear, how the browning of America is making white folks lose their minds. available at bookstores nationwide. Let's put the graphic up. Let's go. White Fear right there. Download the audio version on Audible. Also, we do not have a lot of copies left. Today I mailed 135 copies of my book, The First. We got 500. Once we're out, there's no reprinting. You're not going to find them anywhere else unless somebody resells it. And I'm personally autographing every single one of the copies. And so it's $10. Actually, I'm going to have to change the shipping and handling because, man, the post office go up since the last time I mailed books. But y'all, so if y'all don't, so here's the deal. That shipping and handling going to go up to $7.99. Post office was high as hell. So if y'all want to get that cheaper shipping and handling, y'all better order that book right now because tomorrow it's going to be $7.99. I personally was at the post office for 2 hours shipping out those 135 books, and I was like, man, shipping and handling is now high from the post office. Anyway, get The First, RolandSMartin.com/The First, and of course, be sure to get the Pocket Squares, RolandSMartin.com/The Pocket Squares. All those proceeds go right back into the show. That's it for us, folks. Shout out to my Houston Astros. Kick the Yankees' butt tonight because I'm tired of hearing Mark Thompson's mouth. All right, y'all. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Holla! Black Start Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?